The signal was never meant for them. Far beyond the luminous spiral arms of the Milky Way, nestled in a system of 3 suns and lavender moons, a gentle species known as the Kthari trembled on the edge of extinction. Delicate, long-limbed beings with translucent skin and eyes that glowed with empathy, the Kthari were philosophers, artisans, dreamers. They had long abandoned the art of war, their memories of conflict buried deep beneath layers of peace treaties and shared songs. But now, something vast and terrible approached from the outer voids, a race of merciless harvesters known only as the Vri. The Vri did not negotiate. They did not pause. Planet after planet, they stripped biospheres bare, silencing voices that could not scream loud enough. The Kthari, unarmed and desperate, turned to the stars and cried for help. Their engineers, more accustomed to crafting sculptures than signal beacons, constructed the SOS from fragments of ancient code. It was elegant, compassionate, and unmistakably a plea for mercy, broadcast into the dark with the precision of a poet's last breath. But space is not gentle. The signal, meant for allies in the peace-bound Concord, took an unintended path. Warped by the gravity of a collapsing neutron star, fractured through a binary black hole system, it was flung sideways through subspace, until it reached the Sol system. On the edge of a red-lit battlefield orbiting Saturn's third moon, a sleek, black vessel shaped like a predator's wing drifted silently through the debris field. Aboard the flagship Oblivion's Claw, humanity's finest warriors drank recycled whiskey, sharpened plasma bayonets, and played chess with neural-linked AI opponent. They were veterans of 100 brushfire wars, apex predators, born from a death world that had never forgiven weakness. The signal arrived in the ship's comms core with a whisper of static and then unfurled into light and tone, a message so heartfelt it caused a momentary silence across the command deck. Fleet Commander Aaron Locke leaned back in his exosuit. "That's not human," he muttered, narrowing his eyes. The translation AI, having processed the transmission, displayed a single phrase across the main screen. "We seek not vengeance. Only shelter. Please." Locke exhaled slowly. "Coordinates. Out-system," replied Ensign Vega, a cybernetically enhanced signal analyst. "Real far. Looks like it's been bouncing off gravity wells for months. Misfire. Maybe. But, sir, the sender didn't encrypt. That's either suicidal or naive." Locke stared at the coordinate. He wasn't a philosopher. He was a killer with a conscience patched together from battlefield scars and half-remembered lullabies. "Wake the fleet. Prep a jump." The order echoed through the decks, and within minutes, the Oblivion's Claw aligned itself with the stars, flanked by 3 dreadnoughts and 5 auxiliary gunships. What began as a curiosity was evolving into something more. Humanity, for all its brutality, had always been drawn to underdogs. Some said it was empathy. Others said it was a hunger to find new battles worth bleeding for. During transit, Commander Locke convened with the ship's War Council. Holograms of alien physiologies rotated above the table, rendered from fragments of the signal. Long limbs. No exoskeleton. No natural weapons. "Soft," remarked Captain Dross, commander of the gunship Hellmouth. "They'd last 4 minutes in a gravity storm." "They don't need us to admire them," Locke said. "They need us to show up." "And do what?" Dross grinned. "Hold their hands or break some skulls?" Locke's silence was answer enough. By the time the fleet exited hyperspace, the Kthari homeworld was already under siege. In orbit, the Vri carrier vessel hung like a tumor, dark and vast, pulsing with organic tendrils that reached toward the planet's surface. Explosions flickered in the atmosphere below. On the bridge, Locke's eyes went hard. "Open a channel." The communication tech hesitated. "To the aliens?" "To everyone." The fleet's transmission cut through the system's static like a blade. "This is Commander Aaron Locke of the Terran Deathworlder fleet. You sent a call. We heard it. Stand by for immediate extraction and enemy suppression." The Vri carrier responded by launching a swarm of interceptors. Locke smiled grimly. Finally, someone willing to dance. Within moments, human ships accelerated into combat vectors. The Oblivion's claw released its orbital cannons, slicing through the nearest VRI tendrils with superheated rail pulses. Hellmouth engaged its burn thrust, cutting a path directly through the swarm with explosive proximity mines. The human ships moved like predators in a blood-slick ocean, ruthless, coordinated, beautiful in their violence. Down below, the Kthari watched from the glass domes of their observatories. Where once their skies had burned with fear, now they lit with something alien, firepower unlike anything they'd imagined. Their children clutched one another, eyes wide with awe. Elders bowed their heads, whispering old prayers rewritten with new names. In one of the dome towers, a young Kthari healer whispered, "They came." Beside her, the Archizage of Winds shook his translucent head. "Yes, but we do not yet know what they have brought with them." Above them, the battle raged, but to the Deathworlders, it was already decided. The Kthari had reached into the cosmos with hope, and they had touched something far older, far stronger, and far more dangerous than hope could ever have prepared them for. The Kthari did not know how to welcome monsters. After the battle, silence settled over the homeworld like ash. The VRI carrier had been reduced to a drifting carcass, its core detonated by a Terran kinetic lance that struck with the precision of a god's judgment. The skies cleared, but peace did not return, only the thunderous stillness of survival purchased at too high a price. The Terran fleet remained in low orbit. Not idle. Never idle. Dropships descended like metal birds of prey, carving streaks of fire into the clouds. They landed in the meadows outside the capital spire, crushing ancient ceremonial stones beneath hydraulic landing gear. From the bellies of the ships emerged soldiers clad in matte black armor, visors opaque, movements calculated. Their presence was both promise and threat. Commander Locke stepped onto Kthari soil with the weight of a man who knew he would never be welcome, and did not care. At his side walked diplomatic liaison Mara Keen, her expression unreadable beneath the projection field that adjusted her posture and tone to match alien etiquette. She was the softest edge the fleet could offer, and even she carried a sidearm. The Kthari delegation approached across the windlit plains, robes flowing like water. At their center was Archizage Rel, elder of the Windsong caste, his luminous skin dimmed by exhaustion. He bowed long and low. "You have saved us," he said through the translator field, which gave his voice a soft chime-like cadence. "We are overwhelmed with gratitude." Locke didn't return the bow. He nodded, curt and solid. "Glad we got here in time. The threat is neutralized. Your system is secure. But at what cost?" Rel murmured, casting a glance at the black scorch marks behind the human landing zone. "You move like fire through dry leaves." "You sent a distress call," Mara said evenly. "We responded." Rel's gaze lingered on her, then shifted to Locke. "And will you leave now like the tide? Or remain until the shoreline forgets it was ever dry?" That night, while the humans established a perimeter and erected prefabricated command centers, Kthari citizens gathered on the edges of the camp. Children mimicked the human walk, rigid and powerful. Artists sketched the gunships. A few brave ones approached the guards and offered food or trinkets. The guards, under strict protocol, accepted nothing but watched everything. Inside the command dome, Locke reviewed data streams while Mara stood silently nearby. "You see what's happening out there?" she asked. "Yeah. They're in awe." "They're frightened," he corrected. "Rightly so. They admire strength. They just don't understand its cost." Locke looked up. "Neither did we, once. Then we earned the scars." Mara turned to the display wall, where the decrypted files from the VRI flagship scrolled endlessly. "You know the council back home will want a long-term presence here." "I know. They'll send governors, military advisors, maybe colonists. And the Kthari will agree," Locke said, folding his arms. "Because now they know what waits in the dark. And they know who can hold the line." A sudden chime signaled a visitor request. The display shimmered and revealed a live feed of Archizage Rel, waiting alone at the perimeter gate. Locke sighed. Let him in. Minutes later, the Elder stood before him again, this time beneath the harsh white light of human tech. I come with no counsel, Rel said. No titles. Only questions. Locke gestured to the seat opposite his own. Ask. Rel sat slowly, as if the chair itself might recoil. What are you, truly? Locke's brow furrowed. Deathworlders. I have read that term. We have no word for it. It means we come from a world where everything tries to kill you. The weather, the animals, the land itself. We evolved to fight back. We survived by conquering. And you brought that survival here. You brought us here. The silence stretched. Outside, human engines hummed. Cthari wind chimes struggled to be heard. Finally, Rel whispered, We are not made for war. No one is, Locke replied. But some of us learned how to make it a weapon instead of a grave. Rel rose without another word, bowed once more, and left. That night, a group of Cthari youths approached the human barracks, eyes wide with reverence. One wore a crude imitation of a Terran helmet, fashioned from polished shell and wire. A young Marine named Ortiz knelt to greet them. You kids lost. The youngest, no more than a dozen cycles old, tilted her head. We want to learn. Ortiz blinked. Learn what? To be strong. Like you. He looked back at his squadmates, unsure whether to smile or recoil. Behind him, Commander Locke watched from a distance, arms crossed, eyes unreadable. The Cthari had cried out to the stars for salvation. And now, they were learning the language of their saviors. The first shot came from a ridge outside the human perimeter. It was crude, an energy lance cobbled together from civilian mining equipment, but it struck a Terran recon drone hard enough to fry its guidance core. Within seconds, alarms blared through the camp, and soldiers dropped into defensive formations like cogs in a well-oiled war machine. Commander Locke was already on his feet when the second blast hit, this time aimed higher, toward the sensor arrays. It missed, but just barely. Source, he barked. Northwest slope, elevation 60 meters. Came the quick reply from Specialist T. No formal weapon signature. Improvised tech. Organic power feed. Locke clenched his jaw. Stand down kill response. I want the shooter alive. He knew what everyone else was thinking. This wasn't the VRI. It wasn't even sabotage. It was the Cthari. Within the hour, a strike team had flushed out the culprit. Young, not yet fully grown, her robes stained with sap and heat scorch. She did not resist. In fact, she stood when the humans approached, eyes burning with something between fury and despair. My name is Ilari, she declared. And I will not let us become your next subject world. They brought her into the main command dome, wrists loosely bound. Locke studied her from across the room, one brow raised. Mara Keen stood beside him, her expression unreadable. You fired on our personnel, Locke said. That's a war crime. It was a warning, Ilari shot back. You came to save us. But now you stay. Build. Expand. You do not ask. You assume. Locke paced a step forward, not in menace but in weight. We stayed because the VRI operate in packs. They probe defenses. They return. You stayed because you see a world full of open land, pliable mines, and no military resistance, she replied. We're not blind. Mara interjected gently. We offered protection, not occupation. Then dismantle your bases. Leave no one behind but diplomats and censors. Locke's silence stretched the room taut. She's not wrong, Mara said quietly later, after the girl had been confined in a temporary holding cell with environmental comforts adapted to Cthari biology. You and I both knew this would happen. The signal didn't just bring soldiers. It brought opportunity. This world can't defend itself. Then train them. They'd never survive a campaign. Maybe not now. But they'll never grow teeth if we keep feeding them like pets. Outside, the mood was changing. Kthari artists who once painted human silhouettes in awe now sharpened those lines into caricatures, hulking forms with weapons for limbs and eyes like empty voids. Songs once sung in reverence were now tempered with minor keys and cautious verses. There were no riots, no violence, but the shift was unmistakable. The people were waking from the high of deliverance and tasting the afterbite of dependency. Locke called a meeting with the War Council. Dross, of course, pushed for tighter control. She fired on us. We respond. That's doctrine. She was a kid with a rock in fury, Locke countered. She hit a drone. A rock that could have been a nuke next time. They don't respect our strength, Commander. They're starting to resent it. I'm not looking to rule this place, Locke growled. I want it stable. Then make an example. Locke turned his gaze toward the outer screens, where a slow storm was brewing over the horizon. The planet was shifting both in sky and soul. Later, he stood outside the detention pod where Ilari sat cross-legged, eyes closed, unmoved by her confinement. You remind me of someone, he said through the glass. She didn't answer. When I was 15, I threw a stun charge into a peacekeeper convoy back home. I didn't like that they walked through my sector with their heads high. My father said I'd never survive the consequences. He was right. I died that year, and the soldier I became took my place. Ilari opened one eye. Is that supposed to scare me? No. It's supposed to tell you that survival can be uglier than defiance. She stood slowly, placing her hand on the barrier. Then teach us. But do not chain us, or you will find more like me. The next day, Locke addressed the camp and the Kthari leaders, in a rare public assembly. The fleet is preparing for withdrawal, he announced. A defensive satellite ring will remain. Our garrisons will shrink. In their place, we will open training facilities, should you wish to learn. No conscription. No mandates. Just choice. Ilari stood among the gathering, still in plain robes, but now unbound. And if we choose not to learn your ways? Then we'll still leave you with the tools to defend your own. Archizage Rel nodded from the edge of the crowd, approval mingled with unease. This is not the path we would have chosen. No one chooses war, Locke replied. But sometimes it chooses you. Later that night, beneath the twin moons, a fire circle formed where Terran Marines and Kthari youths sat together. Ortiz handed a field knife to a trembling boy who tried, shakily, to carve a defensive sigil into a piece of metal. We don't do this because we love it, Ortiz said. We do it because someone has to. Ilari watched in silence from the ridge. The Deathworlders had answered an SOS with thunder and fire. Now they were trying to teach the song that came after. 3 cycles passed under the quiet breath of twin moons, and the stars no longer looked like gods to the Kthari, they looked like thresholds. Across the meadows where once no soldier had walked, now stood modular training towers and reinforced bunkers camouflaged in local flora. Terran advisors were fewer now, by Locke's design. They watched, guided, but they did not command. Not anymore. The new Kthari defense cohort was small, barely 300 strong, but each one had chosen the path freely. They bore no uniforms. Their symbols were painted, not stamped. Their weapons, while forged in Terran alloy, were etched in the flowing script of their own language. It was a start. Commander Locke stood at the edge of the proving field, arms behind his back, watching as the recruits drilled in silence. Their formations were flawed, their reactions slow, but they stood their ground. That mattered more than precision. Ilari moved among them, not as an officer, but as a peer. She no longer wore ceremonial robes. Her outfit was utilitarian, her movements efficient. When a young recruit dropped his training spear, she picked it up and said nothing, just held it out until he took it again. Shame burned from his cheek. Locke approached as the session ended. Ilari turned to him without ceremony. They're getting better, she said, breathing hard. They are. You thought they wouldn't last. I knew most would break. But the ones who didn't. I had hopes. She wiped her brow with the back of her hand. You still watch us like we're glass. No, he said. I watch you like I did my first platoon. Knowing the next time they face fire, I won't be there to pull them out. She studied him a moment, then nodded once. Good. From orbit the Vree came again. No warning this time. No signal. No arrogance. Just shadows falling through the sky like teeth from a shattered jaw. A stealth pod pierced the atmosphere and detonated just outside a Kthari nursery dome, rupturing the protective field. The explosion turned morning into red mist. The emergency alarms howled within seconds. Locke's boots hit the ground before the echo faded. The death toll wasn't high, 12 civilians, but the message was clear. They're testing us, he said grimly, scanning the fragments of Vree alloy scattered in the crater. Mara arrived breathless, her eyes scanning the same wreckage. We left just enough of a power vacuum to be tempting. They think we're soft now. They're wrong. He called an emergency council that night, one that included Ilari, Archizidrel, and 3 elected voices from the new cohort. No admirals, no Terran bureaucracy. Just the people who had skin in the game. We either wait for the next strike or we meet them first, Locke said. Rel folded his hands. And become the invaders ourselves? No, Ilari interrupted. We become what we must to protect what we are. She looked to Locke. You have our scouts. We know where their closest nest is. Let us burn it. Locke studied her face, then the others. No fear. Just resolve. He nodded. The assault team launched under cloud cover, moving with stealth and speed. It wasn't a full-scale war, it was a message. They hit the Vree outpost like lightning. Kthari fighters, guided by Terran precision and their own intuition, moved through the trenches like windblade. Ilari was the first to breach the inner core. She didn't flinch as she plunged a vibroknife into the neural stalk of a Vree sentinel, nor did she hesitate to extract data from the terminal they left behind. The mission was swift and brutal. 3 wounded, none dead. A Kthari victory. That night they lit fires, not in celebration, but in memory. The 12 lives lost in the nursery dome were etched into steel plaques that stood beneath the stars. Beside them, Ilari carved a 13th. Not a name, but a question. Are we still what we were? Mara approached her after the flames had faded. You did what had to be done. I know, Ilari said quietly. But I don't know what that makes me. It makes you ready. Locke stood in the shadows, listening. When the Terran fleet prepared to leave the next cycle, it did so without ceremony. No banners, no declarations. Just a slow ascent into the sky, leaving behind a world no longer helpless. Before departure, Locke walked alone to the ridge overlooking the capital. Ilari waited there. You're not staying, she said, not asking. I was never meant to. She handed him a data shard. That's our new doctrine. Mixed strategy. Defensive autonomy. It's not perfect. No doctrine ever is. They stood in silence for a long time. Below, the city pulsed with quiet purpose. Children played near a monument that hadn't existed a cycle ago, a stone pillar with both Kthari script and Terran basic. Strength shared is survival earned. Do you think we'll make it? She asked. I think you already did, Locke said. Now the galaxy has one more world that knows how to answer when darkness knocks. He turned without another word. As the fleet vanished into the stars, the Kthari looked up, not with fear nor awe, but with fire in their eyes. The SOS they had sent had found the wrong species, and somehow that had saved them.